Good evening, Noble County, and those of you who may be watching from beyond the county borders. Tonight, it is April 2nd, 2020, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the effects of self-quarantine at home. We've been having a good time for the most part. Um, Tonight, what I want to talk with you about are concerns that have to do with grass tetany and what that means, why now's the time to be concerned, and then I'll also share with you the steps to access the pre-recorded webinars that were offered earlier today. There were 3 offered today. They were all specific for pastures and forages. So I think that they'll be interesting to you. I'll show you how to access those once we get done talking about grass tetany. So first off, what is grass tetany? Well, it's a condition that can cause death in grazing livestock, and it is basically attributed to an imbalance of magnesium in the plants. So let me read to you a section from Southern Forages, the section about grass tetany. Grass tetany is associated with low levels of magnesium in the blood of cattle and sheep grazing ryegrass, small grains, and other cool season perennial grasses in late winter and early spring, so where we are right now. It is mostly confined to cows and ewes in early lactation and often affects the highest producing animals in a herd or a flock. It results from animals grazing plants grown on soils low in available magnesium, causing them to be deficient in this element, especially when lactation requires a substantial quantity of magnesium. Wet soils low in oxygen may prevent plants from taking up sufficient magnesium, regardless of the soil magnesium level. Grass tetany is more likely to occur on soils low in phosphorus but high in potassium and nitrogen, because this combination tends to inhibit magnesium uptake. This can be a problem with cool season grass forage fertilized with high rates of broiler litter. Probably not something that we use in Noble County, but for some of you watching, it could be. Generally, forage containing 0.2% magnesium or more is unlikely to cause tetany. You don't need to test for that, just so you know. That's the level that we'd base that on. An animal going into tetany initially is nervous, exhibits muscle twitching, staggers when walking, and later goes down on its side with muscle spasms and convulsions. If not treated, death will occur. How do we control grass tetany? Pastures deficient in magnesium should be should be limed with dolomitic limestone, which contains this element. However, magnesium fertilization cannot be expected to always prevent tetany, as grass plants may not take up sufficient magnesium on waterlogged soils, which are common this time of year. Phosphorus fertilization may also be helpful on some soils. Legumes are high in magnesium, and pastures containing sufficient legume forage will normally offset the problem. However, legume growth is often limited in winter, so most of the early season forage may be grass. The most dependable control is supplemental feeding of magnesium fortified mineral. Um, this mix is specialized, and feeding this during the potentially dangerous tetany season can help. In much of our region, grass tetany is most likely to occur during the period from now, late February, early March, into mid-April and early May, on pastures of tall fescue and other small grains. So all of the pastures in our area are primarily tall fescue still, even if you have done methods to renovate pastures with other species, you most likely still have some tall fescue. So group yourself in that uh, group that should be concerned in general. Just make sure that you're watching out for it. Having that high mag mineral available for your grazing livestock is a great mitigation tool. I saw an ad from the place where we buy our livestock feed that they have their high mag mineral in. It might seem expensive if that's not something you normally buy, but you know, how expensive is a lost animal to you? Far more expensive than a tub of mineral. And some of those come with fly control as well, which can be helpful as the weather starts to warm up too. So with that, we have some additional resources available about grass tetany if you want to learn more. just let me know. I'd be happy to send you more information. And there's an excellent article out there written by Roy Lewandowski that it goes into more depth than what I've given you today. As I mentioned, I'm going to show you how to find those webinars from earlier today. And while I do that, I'll talk to you a little bit about what we plan to do tomorrow. So tomorrow will be Friday already. And what we will do tomorrow is talk some about fishing. I just decided that. So fishing is still encouraged as a way to get outside, enjoy time with your family, even though we're practicing social distancing. It's good advice to be 6 foot away or more from the person you're fishing with anyway, so you don't get a hook in the cheek. So that is something that at this point in time, we are allowed to do, and it is encouraged. What I'm going to do at this point is take you to Google. This is my homepage for Zoom. This is the website where you can find the entire schedule of the Ag Madness tournament, including the upcoming programs, the programs that have already occurred. You don't have to use this entire link that's displayed at the top. All you need is go.osu.edu. Let me type that in up here so you can watch me. go.osu.edu/ag madness. That'll take you right back to this landing page. And all you need to do is scroll down slightly. And if you go there today, all of the programs from today are right here on the right-hand side. And all you need to do is click View Replay, Watch Replay. This presentation, Basic Pasture Grazing Management, was given by Roy Lewandowski this morning. Forage cover crops, that was my topic for today. I'm going to skim really quick through those slides before we jump off the video here. I had some issues with the internet during the program, so if you do go back and watch that, the captions are listed on the side, and they are not totally accurate. Some of them are pretty amusing, so that'll be enjoyable. And then at 3 o'clock today, Ted Wiseman covered the do's and don'ts of fencing and water systems, and that was a really good presentation. I watched that as well. So if you want to go back and watch any of those, all you have to do is click the link that says Watch Replay, and we'll take a look at Ted's here. I won't make you sit through the whole thing. I just want to show you what it looks like. So when this pops up, you'll see this little camera, the transcript, the subtitles, if you will, of the discussion will be here on the right-hand side throughout the program. So if you have trouble hearing, it has done its best to transcribe all those words into text for you. This is Julie. She's been working really hard to make sure that all the webinars continue to run smoothly. And that's all you do is you hit play. You can fast forward through to specific sections of the presentation. So here you can see there's Ted. Ted Wiseman is the Perry County Extension Educator for Ag and Natural Resources. And he has a lot of really excellent photos in here to show you examples of good things and bad things that can happen with fence and water systems. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing that screen. I probably should have stopped the video when I did that. Let me try again. Hit the pause button. If you have issues with the volume, there's a volume button here, and then of course you can adjust the volume on your computer speakers or your phone. So let me close that tab. Now I'll stop sharing, and then allow me to share my screen with you again to show you my cover crops presentation from today. Essentially what my topic covered today was the common cover crops that are used in grain production, corn and soybeans and wheat and such, are often also really good livestock feeds. And I think many farmers don't consider that as something that could be potentially beneficial for their farm, aside from the benefits that come as being a cover crop to reduce soil erosion and soak up excess nutrients. They could also be a secondary source of feed for your livestock. So super quick, I'm just going to take you through so you can get a preview of what's included in that presentation if you choose to watch it. We talk about why would you want to consider cover crops as forage, In this picture, what you see are some lambs grazing on turnips. I talk about that a bit in the video. At one point, it transcribes it and says these are aliens that were just weaned, which I thought was very funny. It's weaned lambs, not aliens. There were no aliens involved in the study, at least that we know of. We talk about challenges that can come up when you're trying to use cover crops as forage. There are many potential issues. The biggest one is trying to get that forage dry enough so that you can harvest it. If you're planning to harvest it and feed it in the bunk, or to get fence out in the field so that you can manage livestock grazing. But I think for many people in our area, those are both potentially viable options. There's many questions that you'll have as you try to select which crop is best for you, and the factors to consider in that are how do you plan to harvest that forage? Do you plan to graze it, or do you plan to mechanically harvest it? Or are you going to harvest it at all? Maybe it's just there for soil erosion control, but I still think this is something worth investigating. Here is a graph that shows you many of the common cover crop species and their value for grazing and also as harvested material to feed in the bunk. If you have questions about the timing of which these species should be planted, that's included on another chart coming up. So I'll show you that in a second. When it comes to how to prepare the seed bed, a no-till drill is often the best piece of equipment that you can use. We usually want there to be some crop residue on the surface from the previous crop, but that can cause some issues with trying to get good seed to soil contact. So to reduce those issues, a no-till drill comes in handy. But we want to make sure that we're not seeding too deep, which is easy to do with a drill as well. So it can take a little bit of practice to get the hang of the best thing to do to get those forage cover crops established. We also want to think about fertility and whether we're going to need additional nitrogen to use those forage crops or not. It really depends on your specific situation. Many people in our area are going to use these crops as wildlife food plots, and kind of the same principles are going to apply. If the site is already in a good nutritional plane, you probably won't need to apply additional afterwards, but you might need to do some amendments to get the things started. But in a cropping system, often you're trying to use up excess nutrients, so it seems counterintuitive that you might apply fertilizer onto a cover crop. But if that forage is being removed and taken to another site to be fed, remember that the nutrients go with it. So you could be creating a negative balance of nutrients in the system by harvesting. So if you're trying to get more than one harvest out of the crop, you'd obviously want to replace some of those nutrients so you get a good second harvest. But it could also be that just one harvest is all that you really need to make best use of what you have growing there. But in general, if you're going to harvest that forage and take it off-site, you'd likely want to put a little fertilizer on to put back the nutrients removed. But if you're not going to harvest that and you're just going to graze it, then you probably don't need to. But it really just depends on your specific situation. And it's good to incorporate those cover crops in your soil test when you send in what crops you're going to be growing. Don't forget about your cover crops to include those, and that can help you get some good recommendations. This is the chart I was referring to. This is developed by Mark Schultz, the Extension Forage Specialist for Ohio State. It includes the most common cover crops used that are also forages, includes their seeding rates, their planting dates, how deep to plant them, how much nitrogen they need, estimated yields, and also crude protein and neutral detergent fiber, all of which are important for selecting the species that you want and incorporating the species you have into your feeding program. Also included in here are some tips for grazing cover crops. I won't go through all of those. And then also there's some harvest tips. This is a video just that shows that the animals do in fact eat the cover crops and enjoy them. Here's your tips for harvest. Most of those pertain to remember that this forage is going to be wet. So we need to make sure that we are harvesting it and storing it at the appropriate moisture level for that forage, and that it's going to make it through and remain a safe feed for our animals by the time they eat it. Forage testing, I talk about this all the time. It's still a valid thing to do with cover crops used as forage. really you can't manage what you don't measure. So a good forage test is really not very expensive, worth its weight in gold. Get those done, no matter what system you're using to provide forage. Lots of good resources out there from the university to learn more. Check those out. Helpful publications related to this presentation are available. If you're watching this, you can pause this, write down the links, and go visit those websites. And as always, here's my contact information. This link included in the video will take you to the playlist of all the forage focus videos, which are programs that are about half an hour long, focused on topics related to forages and grazing and haymaking and fertility. If you know how to use a QR code, you can just take a picture of that little box in the corner and it will take you to that website. So that's what I presented earlier today, and you can check that out if you want to watch the replay or just visit the links that I provided. And tomorrow at noon, Bethany and I will discuss some things about fishing. We'll pull up the Division of Wildlife fishing regulations, review what the governor has stated about fishing and state parks and private ponds and lakes, and give you some tips for how to stay safe fishing with kids. So we will come back and see you tomorrow at noon and again at 7 p.m. to review some more information. Thank you and have a great night.